Hey guys, this is going to be season 3, episode 1 of the Leftovers review. There will be spoilers in this if you haven't seen it. If you follow my channel regularly and you don't watch The Leftovers, you do not have to see these videos, but this is a very underrated show that's in its last season. I love The Leftovers. I think it's a fantastic show. I love what it says about humanity. I love the dark tone of the show. And so I thought it'd be fun to go through and review this because I haven't seen a whole lot of this on YouTube. That maybe they were like big YouTube channels that covered this, but not in the same way as like a Walking Dead or another show. This is a show that I just feel like is super underrated, and probably 10 years from now, people will be talking about the show in almost the same way as The Wire. There's a lot of mystery to the show, and I know that there's no way we'll get all our questions answered on the show, but still, it's got some of the most powerful scenes I've ever seen in television. So this is season 3, episode 1. If you haven't seen the show, I highly recommend it. And for everybody here, welcome to my channel. If you like this, you can give me a like at the end of this or subscribe, because I want to do this every week to talk about what's going on. I won't have all the answers, so I'll give you my theories and talk about what's going on. And then what I hope you can do is in the comments below, ask questions or go through it. Let's build a community here for this show. I think it's needed. So the show opens up very similar to the second season. If you remember the second season, we had this mother and her baby in like prehistoric times, which was kind of a dark story. This one opens up with a family in the 1600s, it looks like, or even earlier than that, waiting for the rapture. With the birds will come. I think it was pigeons or doves. I can't remember now. I have to go back and look. That has a date on it. The guy does all these equations and then puts down this day is going to be the day of the rapture. That's what I assumed, either the rapture or the day of the world is going to end, but let's assume it's the rapture. And each time he picks a date, obviously the other people start to get more and more frustrated. The family gets frustrated, but then finally the family leaves the mother, and then she's the only one left, and which I love because she becomes a leftover in a sense, and she goes up one last time, and then everybody in the community seems to shun her, and she goes inside with all these other people, and then boom, we actually see the scene with the GR, and then you see the one girl walk outside, and you see the missile hit from the drone, which I thought was an awesome scene. So it looks like they were killed by a drone. The craziest thing with the show, as we dive through everything, is there's so many different meanings, you never know where we're going to go. So I'm just giving you my best opinion. But I love the way this show started out. This episode was rapid fire. I think that The Leftovers, if I remember season 1, was a very slow show, and at times it can be very slow, but I love slow burns. It's like one of my favorite art forms. But this one, whoa, does it start out fast. So we go right into it. We find out what happens to the GR. And then it's 3 years later, and we see Kevin with his beard now, I guess with his Jesus beard, which we'll find out later in this episode. So we go through that. We see the town. We know that October 14th is coming up. I'm going to assume something really big is going to happen on October 14th. But this being The Leftovers, maybe nothing big will happen on this day. Maybe it'll be, the complete opposite. Maybe, but we're expecting something to happen here. As it ended with his big old happy family, we see that again with everybody together. We see that Kevin's son is now a police officer, so we've learned that. It seems that people are a lot more religious now. There's a lot more Christianity back into this world on the show. Not that many other forms of cults that I could see, which has always been interesting to see where they go from that. So we have that. Scenes that I'm going to talk about now, like scenes that kind of stick out to me, has to do with we're planning about what's going to happen this day, security. The old gentleman, the dog killer, and his friend comes back into play, which we saw in this episode, which was very interesting how fast it happened. But obviously the dog killer, I don't know. I'm not going to remember everybody's names in the show, but I don't remember what his name was. But he goes into it and talks about how the dogs are becoming humans. A bit weird, a bit interesting, his theory. And then obviously Kevin doesn't listen to him. And then later on in the episode, we see that Kevin gets fired upon, and then the man just drastically dies. Now, I'm going to say that every time Kevin starts to have visions or go crazy, which we didn't really see in this episode so much, just a couple flickers here and there, it has been when this guy has shown up, and now that this guy is killed, I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel like we haven't seen the last of this dog killer guy. Something's going to happen, I believe, due to this. We see the holy water scene with Kevin, and Kevin jumping into the water to show that the water hadn't been poisoned. But the scene that really sticks out to me from this episode is the plastic bag scene. And I guess we learn more what this means in the end, but we see the plastic bag scene. It's kind of a shocking scene. It reminds me of, if you remember the first season, Karen that gets shot in the chest with her bulletproof vest on as a way to feel. Originally, when I saw this, I thought that the plastic bag over the man's head in this episode and him and Kevin breathing meant maybe he needed to get almost close to death to feel something in this world. But maybe it's because he's found out that he can't die. That he has kept dying and coming back to life, is what we're finding out later, which makes it interesting that there's a New Testament being written about Kevin that we find out from the priest. So that was interesting to find out as well. So it's almost like maybe he's a Messiah. And so I'm watching all this, and everything is happening so quick in this episode that I'm just like, what's going on here? This is a bit interesting. Theories, I don't know so far. So that's pretty much the gist of this episode. By the way, the very end, we see a very old Karen, and we see these doves again when it says 13 days left. And I'm just thinking birds in the beginning, birds in the end with these messages, which we haven't seen what the messages were. And this lady's bringing it. And then the lady messages she knows it Kevin, and she says no, and she's much older. I don't know. It was weird to see how it all went together. Why Karen's in this episode, what happened to Kevin. It was also interesting when Kevin talked about shooting someone from his dream world. This whole episode makes me think like when he's in this afterlife world and he believes that these things are really happening and going all in between these worlds. I have a feeling we'll see this afterlife world again. I have a feeling that this lady will leave, the one that had the coma, the pastor's wife. She will leave, and it'll be very interesting to see if she leaves what will happen. I'm at a loss here, guys. What I love about this show is how confusing it is, but this one was so fast-paced, and there was so much information to take in coming from all corners. One other interesting scene that I can't get my mind out of was the one with the dog biting the sandwich and taking it away from the dog killer, as I'll call him, that gets killed in this episode. So a lot going on. I don't even know where to go with predictions on this, other than something big will happen on October the 14th. I think we'll see a return of the GR somehow, even though they were wiped out. We have seen scenes before where the government has wiped people out in the show, certain religions. Maybe there'll be a new religion that pops up. Kevin, definitely there's something interesting with him not being able to die, and that's going to come more into play. Maybe he's going to have something to do with October 14th. One thing is for sure, whatever's going to happen, none of us are going to be able to predict, but we can at least analyze the show. I just don't feel like I've seen enough to really be able to analyze, but I'm sure stuff that'll happen in tomorrow's episode, or the episode going on today, the next episode basically, we'll get to see more and more what's happening. So again, I love this show. I just think it's an interesting show. When I watched the first season, and it was just slowly building, and then this GR, these people that smoke cigarettes and don't believe in anything, was really interesting. The second season was, it started out kind of slow, but then when Kevin was dying and coming back to life, it was very interesting. So I keep sticking with this show every year because if someone's saying to me, why watch The Leftovers? It's because it's unpredictable. It has a lot of dark elements in it. Just its view on society and humans and how everything goes into play with this is, to me, very interesting. I will try to upload by the day after the episodes if you guys want to see more about this. Again, I think there's a purpose and a reason for this because I think The Leftovers has a decent sized audience, but absolutely not big enough audience to keep having the show pump out. But I think these 3 seasons will be great, and then it'll just be interesting to see where The Leftovers will stand after this. I hope it can end well. If we get what has been the first 2 seasons, that's great, but I think we need a big ending with the show, and I'm not so sure we'll get it, but I hope it doesn't take away from the greatness of the show. So if I was going to give this episode a grade, I would have to give it an A, actually, because there was just so much happened. I had so much to think about. There were parts where it was kind of slow, and I'm a bit confused. But overall, I thought it was fantastic. What did you guys think? And leave in your comments below. Feel free to give me a like if you like this, and you can subscribe to my channel. This is not the main thing I do on my channel here, but like again, this is one of my favorite shows, and I think there's a need for this on YouTube. There aren't a lot of discussions on this show, so I thought, hey, one of my favorites. It's a more rare show, and let's go into it in more detail. So I'll see you guys in the next one. I hope this wasn't too long. Take care.